Alrighty. Hi, everyone. What are blocks? And by blocks, I mean these things here. At the top, we see the do-end syntax, and at the bottom, we see the same thing, but with the curly brace syntax. And note that both of these are exactly the same thing. The syntax is different. That is, the letters you type in on the keyboard are different, but when these two bits of code run, they will run identically. So what are blocks? And the main point that I want you to take away from this talk is that blocks are functions, just like methods are. Blocks and methods are very similar because they're both different kinds of functions. On the left here, we have a block, and on the right, we have a method. And let's have a look at what they have in common. Firstly, they both take arguments. In this case, they both take a single argument x. They both have a body, in this case, just a single line of code x plus 10. And they both have a return value, which you can't exactly see in the code, but it's the result of adding 10 to x for both of them. So again, blocks are functions similar to methods. They're so similar, in fact, that we can create a method from a block. Here you see the do-end indicating a block, creating a method, and then we call the method with 3, and the result is 13, indicating that it works. And the reverse is also true. We can take a normal method up here and turn it into a block, which is passed into map down at the bottom, returning 11, 12, 13, indicating again that it works. So having seen the similarities, let's have a look at the differences. And as Jack and Hagar would say, the first difference is that a block has no name. All methods have names. So on the right here, we have a method called add10. On the left is a block that does basically the same thing, but there's no name written anywhere in the code. In programming terminology, functions without names are called anonymous functions. So blocks are anonymous functions. You don't normally see blocks by themselves. They're usually inside another method. In this code, we have a method, and then inside you see the do-end block. This is fairly normal Ruby. But what if we tried to do this with methods only? What you see here is code that A, doesn't work, and B, you'll probably never encounter. A method being defined inside another method. Methods just aren't used like that in Ruby, so this is a big no-no. Blocks can access variables outside of themselves. So going back to the previous example with the normal Ruby, on the first line of this method, we see a variable called total being created. And then inside of the block, that variable is being accessed and changed. So the block is using a variable outside of itself. This is different to methods. Methods can't access the local variables in other methods. That just wouldn't make much sense. To go back to programming terminology, this is the definition of a closure. Closures are functions that can access variables outside of themselves. So the technical answer to what are blocks is that they are closures. Lastly, blocks are always arguments passed into method calls. Looking at this example, we have an array of numbers, 1, 2, 3, and we're calling the map method on that array. The block there is an argument that's being passed into the map method call. That is, to state another way, map uses the block that is given to it. To make this more clear, we could write the code slightly differently. Here, we're grabbing the block at the top and storing it in a variable, and then we're passing that variable in as an argument to map at the bottom. This makes it more obvious that blocks are arguments because they're inside the parenthesis where normal arguments would go. The difference is that little ampersand there out the front, which indicates that this isn't a normal argument, this is the block argument. So to summarize, blocks are functions. They're specifically anonymous functions because they don't have a name. They are closures because they can access variables outside of themselves. And they are used as arguments. I'll be giving a slightly longer version of this talk at Ruby Hack Night next week. Hack Night is a meetup where you can come and work on some Ruby stuff, get help from other Ruby developers, and eat some pizza. If you've got something to work on, that's great, bring it along. If you want to learn some Ruby but you don't have anything specific in mind to work on, we can help you with exercises from exercism.io if you want to check that out beforehand, which includes giving you code reviews if you're up for that. If you're interested, have a look for us on meetup.com. It's the same group that organizes this meetup. If you have any questions about Hack Night or about blocks, my name's Tom. You can find me milling around here tonight, or you can get my contact details from Twitter at Tom_Dalling. Thank you for listening.